Hello hunters, it's Drew. This is a quick video on how switch axe files work. Despite spending a lot of time with the weapon, it wasn't until relatively recently that I got a better understanding of what switch axe files are and how they work. So if you're also not sure, or you're just new to the weapon, this should be helpful for you. So to start, let's explain the Phial Gauge. The Phial Gauge is the yellowish bar that fills our switch axe gauge. This indicates how much Phial we have on our weapon. When we swing our switch axe in sword mode, this drains our Phial Gauge. This is because the sword uses our Phials to gain the benefit of whatever Phial type we are using. This means that our sword attacks will benefit from our Phial Gauge, but our axe attacks will not. So then what do each of these Phial types do? Power Phial increases your raw damage of your sword attacks by 15%, whereas Element Phial increases the element damage of your sword attacks by 45%. For Dragon Phial, your sword attacks will deal the amount of dragon element listed under the Phial type. For status files like Poison, Paralysis, and Exhaust, your sword attacks will instead apply the amount of status listed under the Phial type. A little note about Exhaust Phial is that Exhaust is a status that reduces the stamina of the monster. However, if Exhaust damage is dealt to the head, then it will count as stun damage. You may notice that Power Phials and Element Phials or have base element on them. This means that your axe attacks do benefit from this element. However, in Element Phial, your sword mode will have 45% more element. Power Phial, there's no effect because it only affects your raw. And for Element Phials that have status, unlike Poison or Paralysis Phial, your axe attacks will also inflict status damage. In addition, when you're using your sword mode, it will apply 45% more status. Okay, let's talk about amp state. When you hit an enemy with your sword, this builds up a meter around your sword gauge. Once this is filled, you will enter the amp state. It is worth knowing that Power Phial charges this amp significantly slower than other files, such as Element Phial or Exhaust Phial. Once we enter amp state, our sword attacks and our axe attacks will have Phial bursts. These Phial bursts will have the raw, the element, or the status of the switch axe. In addition, it will receive the benefits of the Phial type of the switch axe. For example, for the Element Phial, your Phial burst will receive the 45% additional element. The way I like to think about it is to consider a Phial burst a sword hit. Now we could talk about the Rampage decoration Phial Switch Boost. So in terms of how this decoration affects our Phials, for morph attacks it increases the effect of the Phial, and for axe attacks it receives the effect of the Phial. So for Power Phial, for example, the effect for the sword is increased by an additional 10%, so your sword morph attacks will deal 25% additional raw, and your axe morph attacks will have the 15% effect. This decoration works the same way for status files, in particular Exhaust Phial. You can see that when I do sword attacks, I get the blue effect, but you'll see that when I do an axe morph attack, I'm also getting the blue effect, so the axe attacks are also applying exhaust. I have now taken off the decoration, and we can see that my axe morph attacks do not have an exhaust effect. And lastly, the effect of Phial Switch Boost is that it will increase the amount of Phial Gauge area you recover when you do axe morph attacks or the 2-stage morph. It recovers a pretty significant amount more. I hope this explanation was helpful. It went on for a bit longer than I was expecting and ended up being even more involved than I thought it would be to explain all of this. If you did find this helpful, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I plan to continue making switch axe videos in the future. Thanks for watching, and take care.